have been a lot of things to talk about when it comes to the Nintendo Direct. So many that it's been like a full week now, and I still have not really addressed everything. I've only just now started getting around to the elephant in the room, and that is Detective Pikachu Returns, something that nobody seems to be talking about right now. This is a game that like everybody is just kind of denouncing as being trash or not all that important or relevant, and that it's not a major game for Switch. But the more I think about it, the more I look at the footage, the more I like think back to how much I enjoyed the original game and the movie, how much I enjoy like Scarlet and Violet and Legends Arceus and like where Pokemon is right now. Like the more I think about it, the more I watch the trailer, like the more I realize that like yes, I am very excited for Detective Pikachu Returns, right? Like at the very least, this is going to be the best mystery solving game on Switch this year. This is going to far eclipse like Master Detective Archives, right? Like I think that'll be very obvious comparing the two, and they are the same genre in spite of what some people may try to tell you. But Detective Pikachu Returns looks like it has a lot of really interesting mechanics. It's bringing back some of the characters from the original game. It has like partner Pokemon system. It has like all this cool stuff, and like looking at there's no way to tell how good the game is without playing it. I find that visual novels are often, well, this kind of thing, story focused game, they're very hard to evaluate based on like trailers alone, right? And I think that's part of the problem is that people see this and just see it's a Pokemon game and just kind of assume that like it's just it's so strange the way the Pokemon I guess periphery demographic, people who just watch Nintendo Directs casually. It's crazy how so many of them seem to think this is just another mainline Pokemon game and not its own thing with like its unique animations and a completely different development studio and like a really cool expansion on the Pokemon world, right? Not enough people are giving this series props for how technologically advanced it is, how it brings the world of Pokemon to life, and how just it's just a new, fresh take on the characters. Like so many people like love to complain about Pokemon, mainline Pokemon not innovating enough, but then they somehow like completely fail to notice the fact that Pokemon is the biggest multimedia brand in the world and has dozens of spin-offs with radically different gameplay options to choose from, whether it's new Pokemon Snap or Pokken or this. Like, mainline Pokemon is mainline Pokemon, but if you want something different, you play something different. And I love this kind of stuff. I love it when Pokemon becomes innovative and fun and charming and goes out of its way to be something like to innovate and be unique, and this is absolutely an example of that. And I've seen a couple of people who have played the original 3DS game who have like admitted to me that they're extremely excited about it. And like I have to wonder, this has happened so much to me over the past week, and the more I think about it, I have to wonder if it's the same situation as Super Mario Bros. Wonder, where so many gaming YouTubers are coming out trying to say that like there are no major Switch releases on the horizon. Detective Pikachu Returns isn't anything major. Super Mario Bros. Wonder isn't anything major. Super Mario RPG doesn't count. Princess Peach Showtime looks like a shovelware game. Like everything, we're at the end of the Switch lifespan is what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to downplay everything that's coming out in favor of hyping up a console they don't know anything about, right? Right. That is the narrative right now. And as a result of that, like a lot of these people like aren't even really taking into consideration that this game might have a pretty sizable audience considering the relative success of the movie and the original release. Like why exactly are so many people like trying to write this off as like a failure? Like I'm sure there's no indication of that, right? Like if anything, this is going to be at the very least they're gonna close out the story and they're gonna like resolve the cliffhanger from the original game, right? And I love the original game, so it's one of those things where I'm just kind of like, why exactly are so many people so eager to just ignore this game and write it off? And there have been like lots of examples from this about like this from the last several Nintendo Directs. Like lots of people were treating Tears of the Kingdom the same way before it sold like 20 million copies in like less than 2 months and like outstripped Elden Ring without even really trying. Like we had stuff like Super Mario Bros. Wonder, I think, is going through the same process that Tears of the Kingdom has, and I think to a certain extent the same could be said for Detective Pikachu Returns, right? Like I think a lot of these Switch games, I think the Switch in general is doing way better than most people realize. Like I think the gaming YouTube community, the gaming community online in general, like still does not want to admit that the Nintendo Switch is the market leader. Like I'm seeing a lot of people like being very delusional about the success of games like Elden Ring, Armored Core 6 and Diablo 4 and Street Fighter 6 and Resident Evil 4 Remake and Final Fantasy 16 and Starfield in particular, I think is the big one. Baldur's Gate 3. Like a lot of these guys really seem to think these games are like leaving a major blip on the gaming radar, but in reality they're nothing. Like none of these games are in any way, shape, or form competing with like the average Nintendo release. And I do think we're gonna see in like especially next year, that a lot of these remakes, these remasters, lower budget Nintendo games are actually going to do better than the lazy, half phoned in sequels to like these AAA franchises. Like I could fully easily see the Thousand Year Door outperforming Final Fantasy 16, right? I could see Super Mario RPG outperforming Final Fantasy 16, and people have already brought up the possibility. Pikmin 4, a niche game, one of a title from one of Nintendo's more niche franchises that outsold Final Fantasy 16, right? So like we're already seeing this happen, but like nobody wants to admit it. Nobody wants to address this, that like that Nintendo is just still the market leader right now. That is like the weird thing we're noticing, is that like these people are just like seriously trying to pretend as if like Detective Pikachu, that Super Mario Bros. Wonder, that another Code R, I suppose, Super Mario RPG, not so much Super Mario RPG, but like most of these upcoming Nintendo Switch games are like don't have any real audience at all. Like I cannot begin to tell you how many people, and this is going to be the major thing I'll be talking about the next month or so. I cannot begin to tell you how many people I've seen in my comment section try to convince me that like nobody is excited for Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Oh, not only are they not excited for it, they don't even know it exists, because they're so tuned out of what Nintendo is doing right now. They're just waiting for the next console. Like it's so out of touch with reality. They don't seem to understand how this stuff works now. Is that like people don't get excited for games until they start playing them, because the audience has been burned so many times on these unfulfilled promises and false hype. Like better to wait for the game to come out and then get some like discussion, real discussion on it from like people you know and trust, as opposed to like wait like buying into the hype every E3 season or like every direct or something. Like we saw this with Starfield. How many people did we see like religiously defend Starfield going out into release, and then it actually comes out and it's like everyone is saying it's mid. And like I even that's giving it too much credit. I was addressing the game for what it was right out the bat, right? I was making comparisons to No Man's Sky, and like addressing Todd Howard's history of like lying about this stuff, and like talking about how Bethesda's been on a downward spiral since Skyrim, but nobody listened to me. Like everybody just wanted to continue like the farce that Starfield is gonna be game of the year, and it's just not. It's already dead in the water. Like people have already gone back to like praising Baldur's Gate 3, and that's just gonna get stomped by Zelda as well. Like even if like Baldur's Gate 3 wins game of the year, which isn't impossible considering like how corrupt gaming journalism is, like it's not going to outsell it, right? It's not going to be as relevant. It's not going to have the same legacy. Like it is going to be completely forgotten in the gaming space, like long term, just like Dragon Age Inquisition or any other game of the year contender in like the past decade, right? Like it has been, the game of the year award is useless. Like we're in this weird situation in the gaming sphere right now where everyone seems to want to evaluate games based on how much they're talked about. But in reality, like I would say the quality of a game is measured by how much people play it and how much they enjoy it, right? And you don't necessarily see people like obsess over games they like online, right? I'm finding that more and more as I get older, that I don't necessarily talk about everything I'm playing, right? I just booted up like the Pokemon Scarlet DLC. I don't think I'll be talking about it at all, like purely because of purely because there's no real reason to. Like, I'll probably talk about how much I love Pokemon Scarlet as a whole and how it gets like such a bad rap by the community. Looking at you, Demish. Like, I might talk about that, but I won't talk about my experiences playing the DLC specifically, right? Does that mean I'm not playing and buy? I didn't buy and play the DLC? No, right? Like I did, but like I don't necessarily feel the need to obsess over every little detail in these games. To like, I feel like the online community is kind of it's kind of a placeholder that a lot of people have for like actually playing games. Like I've noticed this behavior with PC gamers in particular, how often they come after Nintendo and come after Zelda for like just ridiculous petty reasons, right? Like I saw so many gamers, so many steampunks like trying to brag about Baldur's Gate 3 back when it had like a 97 on Metacritic, like trying to say it was like the most critically acclaimed game ever. Like it was a massive thing, and like it was just what if the game is so good, why are you like coming after me instead of playing it? Like that's kind of the mindset I have these days. Is that like one of the things I just really want to emphasize is that like we can't evaluate games based on how popular they are, right? How much people are talking about them online. Like we should talk about the games that are good, right? Some of the best games I've played recently, like, have very little discussion online. Stuff like 13 Sentinels, stuff like Grim Grimoire. I haven't seen anybody else talk about that. Stuff like let's see, I've yeah, I've gotten into playing like Advance Wars, the remakes for that recently. I think a lot of people are sleeping on that. Uh, like so many people like they can't brag about sales numbers or like critic scores anymore, so they kind of shifted to this weird thing where they have to brag about how much a game is talked about, but or how many players it has on Steam. But as we've as bots, as it becomes more understood that like a lot of this discussion about these games is like botted, it's bots like trying to tell you that like, oh, Cyberpunk 2077 is good now, or that like Starfield is a great game with no glitches at all. Like, well, as people start realizing that's true, I can't imagine that like this is gonna hold. And like I think it's already kind of falling apart, right? Like even now I feel this sense that like every game they tried to throw out against Nintendo this year just completely fell flat on its face. Every time they tried to call something like Fire Emblem Engage or Cereza and the Lost Demon a bomb, like everyone just ignored them and just played and enjoyed the game, right? Like every time they tried like doing something like this, it failed. And I have to wonder if Detective Pikachu Returns is not going to be any different. Like I have to like come out and say that like the game is relative to its budget. Like I do think the game is going to be successful, right? Like obviously it's not going to be like the best-selling game on Switch, like new Pokemon Snap sold like 2 million, but like I could see it doing a million easy, right? Like I don't see any reason to suspect that this game is going to be a failure, that it's going to be disappointing, but like so many people are coming out here trying to say that this was like a really disappointing announcement, that like it looked bad or that like nobody was going to buy it, and that could not be further from the truth.